share our findings and recommendations to Manatee County around a net zero solar energy feasibility study for the county. My name is Dr. Joseph Dorsey, and I'm on the faculty at the Patel College of Global Sustainability here in Tampa, Florida. This course was designed, which we call Concepts and Principles of Sustainability, to expose our students to not just concepts and principles, but also application of sustainability. And so I feel that this is a great opportunity for our students to share their enthusiasm, their knowledge, and expertise with the larger community to be engaged in projects that have been beneficial to society. And in this particular case, I felt as though we at the Patel College have an obligation to work with communities that are interested in alternative forms of energy production. As we're all aware that the climate is changing in ways that are unpredictable, and it's important that we have alternative energy sources. And so we're given this opportunity, and I'm very happy to present what we've come up with as recommendations today. But we didn't do this alone. It comes under the umbrella of the Community Sustainability Partnership Program, which is part of, let me advance this, I'm talking too much here. The Office of Community Engagement and Partnerships at USF. And so this is a part of the university system to expand and our contacts with the larger community by engaging the local as well as global issues related to the strategy to change the lives of community to be better, to improve our health and foster sustainable development and put positive changes in society, as well as to produce well-educated and skilled global citizens in our students through commitment to these various operations that we have with communities, and of course to create strong partnerships with the university and the larger Florida community. Okay, let me see. It's not quite advancing right now. This is okay. So the Community Sustainability Partnership Program is under what they call the EPIC Network Program. It's hosted and supported at the University of South Florida. And its initiative and its goals are to improve the quality of life and social wealth. And so this is part of the university's connection to sustainability to make us have a more livable and more democratic society. And so when what they do is they ask faculty and classes throughout the university based upon various requests from municipalities for assistance to work on sustainability related projects. And so this is actually my second CSPP collaboration. First one we did was with the city of Dunedin, which was similar to this as far as looking at solar, energy feasibility. And so it was very successful with that particular community. So I really was excited about the opportunity to share our expertise with the Manatee County as well. But let me share a little bit about the Patel College of Global Sustainability itself at USF. Some of you may know about the college, but for those who don't, it's an MA program, Master of Arts program, exclusively. We don't have undergrad or PhD program for now, but as an MA program, our mission is to put students out there at the graduate level, so as managers and as professionals, to be in positions that can really change, the things that need to be done in society towards a more sustainable society. We have 9 concentrations, things that focus on water and energy, food, entrepreneurship, sustainable tourism, climate change, policy as well. And my area of expertise is food and food nutrition. So I oversee the food sustainability concentration. So we have 4 core courses that we teach, and Concepts and Principles of Sustainability is one of those core courses. And it's a kind of course that is very flexible in the type of projects that I can bring to it. And so I felt that this would be a perfect course to bring all of the students in, no matter what their concentration is, to focus on sustainable energy, because of course we all understand energy is prevalent throughout our whole society. In fact, this runs our society. And at this point, because fossil fuels are, limited sources that will be exhausted at some point, we have to start looking at alternatives such as solar and wind and others. And I thought it would be great that we all are looking at this as a way of securing our energy future. We have a very diverse faculty as well as student population. We have students from all over the world and all over the country. And so I thought we have a great representation of not just America, but the world in our faculty and students. Our focus is mostly interdisciplinary. We look at different disciplines. We bring those together to work in conjunction. A lot of times we talk about the notion of systems thinking, of integration and transdisciplinary work that transcends the disciplines, that looks at creating solutions to problems. We have somewhat of an urban focus, which I think is really important. So when something comes up in, say, Manatee County, we feel this is right up our alley. So I think urban development is a very important aspect of sustainability. And as I said earlier, we apply sustainability. We just don't talk about it as a theory, but we look at how do you actually practice it, because I believe in the future sustainability will be a lifestyle and not a trend. And so these projects help us to move in that direction. And finally, like when I talk too long, the screen sort of freezes up on me. Come on, advance. There we go. Back the other way. Come on, there we go. Okay, so this is a final report. Now, this presentation is based upon a final report that we did, and we already submitted to the county. And it's very interesting that this presentation is based on a composite work of 58 students over 2 semesters in both in-class and on-class, online classwork. And so I started it off when I found out we were going to work with Manatee, I started off in the fall with a class. I had other projects going on, but one of the projects was Manatee County's, solar energy feasibility. And so I asked some students if they would be interested in at least starting some preliminary work, and some students did. And so I got 2 reports, one online and one in class, back in fall. But the real study commenced in the spring, where I had a class of about 40 students, and but I had the whole class focus on this particular project. And so I broke them into teams, 12 teams, both in class and on class, and they focused on 5 aspects of research. I had teams looking strictly at solar technology, had teams looking at return on investment, teams looking at financing, teams looking at the best practices of other counties in the states related to their solar energy programs, as well as looking at solar arrays. And so over the course of the semester, we had different waves of information that were coming in with the help of Manatee County. There were rewrites but ultimately each one of these teams provided a final report at the end of the semester. And what my job was laboriously was to take these 12 reports and condense them into one final report that we would present to Manatee County. So it took several months to do that, but with the help of the students that you'll hear from today, we were able to fine tune not only the report, but also this presentation. So I'll briefly introduce myself again and my student team, and we'll move on in a few seconds here. So once again, I'm Dr. Joseph Dorsey. I'm on the faculty here. I also am the director of our academic capstone experience, which is our capstone program, which students have to do a research project or an internship to complete their academic requirements. And as I said, I oversee the food, sustainability, and security concentration. And as I said, I do like to bring my students into the area of solar feasibility studies, and I'll continue to do this in the future. Now, I'm going to turn the next person that is part of our team is Steve Lang, who is studying energy at Patel College. He is working on a energy sustainability certificate. We have Hillary Roth, who who is also in the college. She's in the climate change and adaptation concentration, and Amanda Shelton, who is in our sustainable business concentration. And so that's the team, and we will start with Hillary to discuss some of the key points of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dorsey. Okay, so our job during this research was to assess the possibility of achieving net zero by converting all of the public buildings in Manatee County to solar energy. And our overall conclusion that we came up with is that it's not possible to achieve net zero by utilizing only rooftop solar and carport arrays. So our data analysis and calculations that'll later be explained by Amanda in our presentation on slides 19 and 20 shows that if all of Manatee County's public buildings had solar arrays on their rooftops, this would only be able to supply 10.57% or rounded up to 11% of the total energy usage that is required by the county's public buildings. And additionally, it would require upfront funding and financing. Next slide. However, we don't suggest that we ignore this idea altogether because rooftop solar and carports can help to supplement public relations and help to get the community aware and involved within the county's sustainable transition. Next slide. So ultimately, based off of our conclusion, we developed a three-phased approach that we feel is going to be the most sustainable way to maximize the environmental, economic, and ethical standpoint of Manatee County. And before I review this approach with you, I'd like to point out that we do highly recommend that by completing this three-phased approach, using the proposed sequence in order to maximize the results. All right, next slide. Phase one is basically focused on public and employee education on the importance of conserving energy. We do recognize that changing behavior of employees is pretty difficult, especially on a short time scale. So we are suggesting doing simple public or like education initiatives like including motion censored lights within the buildings. So if there is an employee who tends to forget to turn the lights off, you're not necessarily changing their behavior, but you would ultimately reduce the energy usage within the building. We also know that there is a power of promotion of education within parks or recreational places or public buildings, and this could ultimately help to pay extra dividends in the additional energy savings. Thank you. The second phase is that we think that the analysis of energy flow within the public buildings is essential to support energy conservation. And we recognize that it is important to reduce the input just as important as it is to reduce the output. So we suggest that for phase two, an energy audit for all of the public buildings should be conducted. This would help to save energy through retrofitting the building by supplementing insulation, by creating energy efficient windows, converting lighting from incandescent light bulbs to LED light bulbs, and so on. So really this is important because if we reduce the energy usage within the buildings themselves, this would also reduce the amount of energy that would be needed from the solar arrays. In order to accomplish this, we do suggest getting a qualified contractor to perform this energy audit, which you all can choose based off of your contractual and financial needs to develop the analysis and the procedure of how you would want to approach phase two. But it is important to note that some of these retrofits can be effective immediately, like switching the light bulbs, or some of them might actually take a little time to see the results. So that is something to keep in mind. But ultimately, according to the energy.gov, that by utilizing an energy audit, you could save between 5 to 30% of the total energy. And this is significant because if it's compared to that rounded 11% that I discussed at the beginning, it ultimately can save just by using this one phase alone. And now I'm going to pass it over to Steve.
Thanks, Hillary. There is a way actually to achieve net zero for Manatee County, and that's by using what's called a solar power purchase agreement. And this is being done all over the country at the moment. Solar power purchase agreement is, in a nutshell, the owner, which would be Manatee County, would offer to a contractor either a low-cost lease or a no-cost ownership of land to build a solar array with the intent of selling power back to the owner. So in this case, the owner would be Manatee County, and the developer would be, and the utility would be Florida Power and Light. And this is because the Florida Constitution has a clause in it that prevents anyone but a utility from selling power. So the county has to use Florida Power and Light to create a power purchase agreement. So according to the graphic on the slide that you see there is the traditional solar power purchase agreement, but by combining the developer and the utility, you can still do a power purchase agreement. And in fact, Florida Power and Light is doing what's called community solar with 3 public schools in Manatee County right now. So this is a possibility to do. Next slide. So here's an example of a power purchase agreement done by a government entity. This is Nellis Air Force Base, and this power purchase agreement was initiated in 2007 and over 2008 and installed at the later part of 2008. And at that time provided 19 megawatts to the base, which accounted for a little more than a third of the entire base usage and saved $1 million a year in energy at no cost to the government. No cost to the government because the contractor is responsible for all the permitting, for the building, for the design. All the government did was provide the land to the contractor. And in the case of the Nellis Air Force Base, that area happened to be an old landfill. And so they couldn't build anything on that particular location anyway. Next slide. So we've got done some research and looked at some locations that might be good for a solar power purchase agreement. And one of them, this particular proposed location, is out by Parrish Lake, and there's an existing FPL solar plant there. So it seems like a good location. They can easily tie in. It's cited as A, so the way I understand it, that's county-owned land. There's about 1,000 acres there, but our recommendation is to provide 200 acres to FPL at either no cost or a very low cost lease. And what you actually need is about 100 acres in order to achieve net zero. Next slide. If for some reason that location doesn't work out for environmental reasons or any other reason, there's a secondary location, and that is A1 zoning. This is by the water plant, and so it's more clear to me anyway, looking at Google Maps, that this is county-owned land. And there looks, when I did the calculations there with the Google measurement tool, it came out to be about 200 acres that seems to be available there. Next slide. A third location would be at the landfill. And so NREL, which is the government website which promotes solar development, has recommended using closed landfills for solar arrays. And this is because you can't actually put buildings on a landfill, but a solar array can be installed on a landfill because plenty of room for the landfill off gas and so on. And so the third location would be the landfill, and as landfills fill up, they get capped off. And so just again, looking at it from the air, from Google Maps satellite, it looks like there's about 300 acres currently in use. And when that gets closed off, then, and the landfill moves further north, then 100-acre solar array could be built there. Right? So the phase 3, the primary recommendation is to create a power purchase agreement with FPL, but we do have an alternative to phase 3, and for this I'd like to turn it over to Amanda.
Thanks, Steve. So I'm going to be discussing our alternative to phase 3. So like he mentioned, we do recommend that the county should enter in a power purchasing agreement with Florida Power Light, but we provided this alternative in case that's not possible. So the goal of this alternative phase 3 approach would be to retrofit buildings for solar. And again, the goal is going to be using as many buildings as possible, and that's going to be buildings that have large roof areas. And while there are a lot of buildings that have large roof areas, it's important to note that not all of the area can be used for solar installation. And it's also important to note that the solar energy output may not equal the energy that's required for the building. And so let's go ahead and go on to the next slide and take a look at some of our building options. Here you can see a breakdown of the building name as well as some metrics that I'll dive into. So we've got the average kilowatt hour per day, and that was provided from the Manatee County utility data. And then next to that, we went ahead and determined how many panels were needed. And so to do this, we looked at how many panels would be required to make the building net zero. And then next to that, we went ahead and looked at the square foot that's usable on the roof area. Like I mentioned earlier, not the entire roof may be available. And so next to that, for the usage of roof area that's available, we use the Google measurement tool to determine the availability there. And next to that, we have the panels that will fit on the roof. And so there we can see, the differences between how many panels are needed versus how many panels can fit on the roof. And, some things that we counted for when we were looking at the panels that were required to be net zero were sunlight hours per day. We factored in the conversion from DC to AC, as well as the conversion from kilowatt hours to watt hours. And what we've done here is we've added a footnote describing all of the different calculations. So this will be a very useful resource for determining building locations if we do end up going down the route of the alternative to phase 3. So if we continue on to the next slide, here you can see some funding options, and there's really a variety of ways to go, and that varies from state and federal tax credits. So this is really just a resource and a list for the financing department and investors to look into moving forward. And if we continue to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about the return on investment. So there's a couple different ways to really look at return on investment here. And we thought it was pretty useful to determine the payback period. And so the payback period, we have the equation there. That's going to be the total system cost divided by the electricity cost. And I'll get into that with an example. One thing to note, though, is that typically a solar array installation costs as much as the equipment. And as we previously mentioned, there would be about 100 acres required to become net zero. So for this example, that's something we factored in and considered. So if the equipment costs about $35 million, the total cost would be $70 million, including the installation. And so right now, based on our analysis, we see that the average yearly energy usage costs about roughly $5 million, and that didn't account for any factors such as inflation or taxes. So using those numbers, we can see the 70 divided by 5 would give us approximately 14 years for the payback period. Now, we didn't want to stop there. We wanted to provide a future-looking estimate for the ROI looking at the life cycle of the solar panels. And we've determined that to be 25 years. And when I say 25 years, That just means that the solar panels will be performing at maximum for 25 years. And then after that, you can start to see a slight decrease in performance of solar panels, but it's not like you're going to need to replace the solar panels every 5 years. So I just want to note that that's about the max capacity is the 25 years life cycle. So looking at that, we've determined with maintenance fees, that would be about $45 million for a return on investment 25 years out. And so I know we've thrown a lot of information at you so far. We've also provided a Excel file in the deliverables to you. And that Excel file is actually doing an ROI, a detailed ROI analysis on the public safety building. And we tried to provide some information for how that could be conducted on other buildings as well. But, you know, always feel free to reach out if any further clarification is needed on that. But so that's something that we've provided for a more detailed ROI investigation. But if we continue on, I'll go ahead and just provide a quick summary of the options we've discussed. So for phase one, we really want to work on public education and employee education and looking at things that we can do to help decrease the energy demanded. So that's going to be things like sensors and LED lights. And then, you know, entering into phase two, we really recommend an energy audit be done by a solar energy professional. Doing this audit can really allow us to look at how much energy we're currently demanding at each site to see where we can improve. So any type of efficiency and savings that we can add could really, you know, could improve the efficiency by 5 to 20%. So phase three, again, we really recommend that we want to recommend that Manatee County enters into a power purchasing agreement with Florida Power Light. And then I did just to provide an overview of the alternative option for that. Now for phase three, there are the 3 different locations that we've discussed. And we also discussed that Lake Parish is probably going to be the top location we recommend. And we don't think that the solar arrays on building rooftops would be necessary if we're able to enter into the power purchasing agreement. And then if we continue to the next slide, I'll go ahead and recap on the alternative. So this would really only be recommended if the power purchasing agreement can't be reached. And again, if we do go this route, we're really going to look at how can we make the buildings more efficient themselves to get us closer to being net zero. And as we previously mentioned, right now, if we were just to do the solar energy on the buildings that we've provided an analysis for, we're really only going to be able to reach 11% of you know, the total net zero that we're looking to get. So any type of modifications that we can do, whether it be internal or external to the buildings like shade structures, that's really going to help improve the output. So with the alternative to phase three, you know, the best recommendation would be we could get anywhere from 40 to 60% of the net zero goal. And we've included the 40% here to be a conservative estimation. And, you know, with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time and go ahead and open it up to any of the questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. That was really a great presentation. Really, really good information for us to take back. I really appreciate that, especially a lot of the information on the power purchasing agreements. I can say on our end, we are actually working on a solar research project in partnership with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council and some other local partners as well. So we've actually had those preliminary discussions with FPL. We've looked at a couple of areas within the county that might be feasible for such an agreement. So, but really there's been a couple that you guys mentioned that we did not have on our list that I certainly am going to dive in and look into. So thank you for that. I do want to mention to everyone who joined us, this presentation was a very condensed version of the total report. I think the total report, it was close to a 100-page document that we got. It was very robust, very comprehensive. It actually not only does it dive into the power purchasing agreement, but it also talks about some of our buildings specifically and the feasibility for that solar, our public safety building, our Lake Manatee dam area, among others. So if anyone's interested, I can certainly provide that for you because it goes a lot more in depth. So to do the questions, what we're going to do is we're going to do it via chat, which it looks like we've already done quite a bit. So I'm going to try to throw a couple at you, sort through. I did want to mention, Susan Glickman mentioned that the prohibition against the third-party sale of electricity is in statute and was upheld by the Florida Supreme Court. So just want to thank kind of Susan for her contribution there. So the first question I'm seeing from Michael Lynch, who's in our utilities department. He works in transportation planner. He's wondering where that 9.75% number, which I think it was anywhere from 9.75 to 11 that you said if we had every rooftop in the county that had solar panels, it would still only make up that percentage of our energy consumption and renewable energy. Where did that number come from?
Wants to take that? Thanks, Steve.
Dr. Dorsey, can you go back to that slide?
Okay.
So that was actually
Going, where's it at?
Next, one more back. One more. The slides that Amanda did with the data table.
Oh, the data table. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was just a general question, really, just the factors that were involved.
Yeah, so it was actually 10.57%, which we rounded to 11. But as Amanda said, we used the measurement tool on Google, and we measured the total area of the top of the roof, and we estimated how many panels would be able to fit on that roof, and how much power would be generated by that number of panels. And we took how much power would be generated by that number of panels and divided it by the total energy that Manatee County would need, and we came to the conclusion that about 11% of the total energy that the public buildings utilize would only be covered by 11%.
So you can actually see it as a ratio in the far column on the right where it says number of panels that will fit on the roof. You can see that total. And then on the third column where it says number of panels needed, at the bottom you can see that total. So if you divide 12 by 117, you're going to get about 10 point something or 11. That's where that came from.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Also, let me address, somebody mentioned something about power purchase agreements prohibited by statute, and that's true. It's prohibited in the Florida Constitution, actually, but Florida Power and Light is a power producing company, so you could enter into an agreement with them. You can't actually go to a contractor like the solar power purchase agreement standardly has.
Yeah, great point, Stephen. And that kind of goes into, Susan had another question about the Solar Together program that FPL has put in, which was the community solar you were speaking to.
Right.
We are actually, Manatee County Utilities is already a partner in phase 1 that opened up. So they have already devoted a certain percentage of their energy consumption to come from solar. Our team out by the dam, we're part of phase 1. I did just receive some information that FPL is adjusting their expansion of solar to maybe a lower amount. I'm gonna have to get more info on that, but I do know they have a Solar Together program, and I do know we are looking at it as a county because we certainly agree we would never be able to meet that 100% renewable goal with just rooftop solar. So we will have to have an agreement of sorts, with the FPLs of the world to expand our energy consumption via solar through that program. But we are working with them to research certain land areas that might be conducive as well. So it's really twofold. But yeah, we are a part of that Solar Together program.
That's great. And unfortunately, it's kind of supply and demand. So the more people that want solar to be provided, the higher the cost is going to be. So the better It's
Right.
better for FPL or whatever, so whatever utility company is providing the power to, the more panels they can produce, the better it'll be for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely agreed. And that phase one filled up very quickly. I actually had heard about it after it had already, completed phase one. So I've been talking to them. They are opening a phase two, I believe sometime next year. So we're kind of getting all of our ducks in a row here on the county, see what accounts may be interested to join phase two, hopefully. But we do have our utilities team that is part of phase one.
Right.
So we'll be interested to see how that kind of pilot program goes. Moving on to a next question is Nelson Galliano. He's also a transportation planner. Nelson, I know your question about the possibility to include the Willow-Ellington Corridor Trail. I'm going to have to talk to you personally about that. Certainly USF wouldn't be able to answer it, but I'll talk to you and get more details on that corridor because I'm not necessarily familiar. And see where it's at, and maybe we can add it to our area of research that we're conducting on our end.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Nelson. Next question is CJ, and she's a planner, one of the leading planners with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. And this is for the USF group. Was there a building or area would be useful for charging municipal fleets and service vehicles? So did you see a building or area when you were citing the county that could charge our fleets? Or did you look in any particular area of that?
I don't think we looked at that. I don't remember seeing anything on the full report along those lines.
Okay. And CJ, we'll look into that too, because I know Matt Case is on the call. He's our fleet manager. We've talked briefly about that. I don't really know what the feasibility is, but we have had discussions, and I'm sure we'll continue them and see what might be feasible. Kate Gilmore, who's actually with the dam, mentioned that their Solar Together contribution, they're subscribed for 1,307 kilowatts in phase one. So that'll be kind of our pilot program, and we're really interested to see how that goes for them. I have maybe an easier question on my end about how did you calculate the return on investment? I know you had an equation. Did you use a software program? Did you, how did you go about calculating that?
Yeah, so for the payback period, we just did some research on different measures for return on investment, specifically for the payback period. We found out that if you took the total investment divided by what it currently costs you, that would give you how long it would take to recoup that investment. And we felt that that was going to be the best determination of return on investment for what we're looking at with, such a large investment cost.
Right. Okay, great.
Yeah, and then we do have a detailed ROI in a calculator where you can plug in some information. And that gets into a little bit more detail, breaking it down to electricity rate that you're currently being charged per location. And we only did it as an example for the public safety, but we detailed some steps to take to fill out all of the columns. And then your calculation should give you the payback period with a lot more detail per location.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So if you understand, that was a separate Excel file that was provided. And even though it has the public safety building in it, all you have to do is change the values and it'll recalculate for any building. Okay.
Right. Yeah, and for everyone that joined, like I said, we've got that. We're going to have a copy of the presentation. I'm actually recording it as well, and the about 98-page report, so we can share that with anyone that might be interested as well. We've got another question in from Hank, who's the Energy Sustainability Manager over in Pinellas County. And he wants to know if you looked at updates needed to the roofs for the solar siting, code regulations, probably the age of the roofs, things of that nature. Was that considered?
No, we didn't. What I did is I I took, actually it was Google Earth, and I used Google Earth to circle around the building so I could see, you know, where the shading was, what the direction of the roof was. And so buildings that had good solar exposure, you actually have to go in 3 feet from the edge, from the crest of the roof, from the sides and the bottom of the roof. You have to go in 3 feet because the fire department needs access. It's a fire code thing. And so I did that in 3 feet and did a perimeter of any roof that had good solar exposure. Even if it had a little partial shading, I went ahead and used it because it's possible with partial shading to use microinverters. And so that would be up to the company that installs for you, you know, to whether they put a microinverter on or not, or whether it's needed. But a microinverter at the panel level will convert power from DC to AC at the panel, and so the shading doesn't hurt the whole array that way. So in any case, every building that had good solar exposure, I outlined it and it gave me a square foot and I totaled it up. That's the extent of what I did. I didn't look at, I didn't actually have access to data about whether the roof would support the structure. That's something that does have to get looked at when you do when you apply for a permit. But again, that the solar contractor would apply for the permit.
Right. Okay. Hank, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. It's just I know it's a big barrier for some regarding, you know, wind speeds and codes, and yeah. There's, you know, myths out there about, you know, solar panels won't last in a hurricane, et cetera. And so that has to be, you know, depending on any roof upgrades that are needed, that could have a huge cost implication to installation and the overall return on investment. So that's all.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Great. Go ahead, Amanda.
I just wanted to mention another tool that's really useful, similar to the approach we did with Google Earth. There's a tool called PV Watts Calculator, and that tool is very similar, where you can go in and draw, you know, where are you looking to have solar panels, what type of solar panels, and you can actually get into the fine detail of, you know, the tilt. And so I just wanted to mention the PV Watts Calculator as another resource that we use just for some investigation. But really, if we can get a contractor out there to give a firm estimate, that would be more reliable and more accurate in the ROI.
Great. We got I'll make this the last question, just so I can kind of keep conscious of everyone's time. This is from Alana Todd, who is a planner with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council as well. Dr. Dorsey, this one's for you, or Kelly Gaskell. I know you are on the call as well, so you might be able to answer. But is USF willing to work with any other interested counties or cities to create a similar net zero plan for future classes, or do you have anything lined up as well?
Yes, we would be willing to work with any county in the, in the state if they want us to. I think we do have another project that's kind of in the works right now. I think Kelly can address that a little more than me, but as far as my class is concerned, I'm always willing to take my students to any place to work on a project such as this.
Yes, I just wanted to comment. It's Kelly Gaskell from Patel College. We do have a new partnership starting this fall. It involves 3 counties and the city of Largo, and that's through the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. So we are starting that project with them in the fall. And we also work closely with our USF Office of Community Partnerships and Engagement. So we want to make sure that all entities are kind of flowing through that office. I don't know if Mazi Ferguson's on the call, but yes, we certainly value the partnerships with the counties, and you can certainly reach out to my office if you're interested in future collaborations. Thank you.
I am on the call, and I would.
Hey, Mazi.
Hey, and I would agree with both of those answers. So we are changing our RFP schedule. We once reached out, I think, at the end of or beginning of November, and then we would have that open until March. But now our RFP is more of an open RFP. So you can reach out to us, or anyone can reach out to us at any time now, and we would begin those relationship building conversations so that we can schedule out best when we could work with someone.
Great. Okay, well, I'll wrap things up. I'm seeing people drop like flies. Seems like an hour is the time frame. I want to thank Dr. Dorsey, Kelly Gaskell, Mazi Ferguson for facilitating this presentation, and definitely Hillary, Amanda, and Stephen for presenting as well. I know this is a semester past the one you've completed, so you're doing work for a course you're no longer in. So, thank you for your time today. It was really a great presentation and for the work during the semester. And thank everyone for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was very fun. It was a lot of fun. So
thank you all so much.
Hope it helped.
Great. Have a good day, everyone.
Good day. Thank you.
Thank you.